Meanwhile, apparently not all threats and insults are a problem, depending on who you are and depending on who they are levied against. Congressman Randy Fine was on CNN and was interviewed. And the CNN host says, you are part of the problem in escalating the violence and violent rhetoric against others. You call the school board member a whore. You call the congressional colleague a terrorist. Aren't you part of the problem? And Randy Fine's answer is essentially, no, because those things I said are true. Mental gymnastics, a mental trapeze artist. Listen to this.
I do want to talk to you about some of the rhetoric, because there's a lot of talk about rhetoric and how this gins people up. A few years ago, you were called out for calling a school board member a whore in a text. You've called one of your congressional colleagues a terrorist. Are you part of the problem here?
Well, look, I think what people write in private text messages to each other is one thing. If I had said that in a public message, I'd understand. But I do think there are issues. Look, when we have protests on Saturday calling something...
Guys, it was private and it was true.
No kings, when Donald Trump isn't a king. He's been elected overwhelmingly by the American people. And it's compared to the revolution. I mean, that is a call for violence. When people are waving signs that say 86-47.
The completely peaceful protests were a call to violence. Oh, boy.
I think we've heard this discussion about taking down the temperature after President Trump was assassinated twice, and I don't think people are getting the message.
Did you catch that? After Trump was assassinated twice.
I think we've heard this discussion about taking down the temperature after President Trump was assassinated twice, and I don't think people are getting the message. So this is real.
Are you not getting the message too?
And we all have to
be fair, is it fair to say that the way that you speak to your colleagues, what you say about them, and the fiery rhetoric that you also use is also an issue that you're thinking about maybe changing?
It's a fair point, but I think fiery rhetoric is different than a call for violence. Calling evil for what it is, calling danger for what it is acceptable. It's when you cross that line and you say, and that person should be killed. That's never a line that I've crossed, nor do I think it should be done. But we saw that kind of rhetoric just on Saturday at these protests. And I think that is a problem. We've seen it repeatedly with President Trump for years. And I do think it's a problem. And the problem is these people are crazy. This guy in Minnesota, he's going to turn out to be crazy. And when crazy people hear these things...
Oh, there it is. How predictable. You know, the day before yesterday, Tuesday, I mentioned specifically, they are simply going to say the pro-Trump MAGA terrorist who killed the elected officials in Minnesota, he's merely crazy. It's just mental illness. But of course, we know that most, quote, crazy people, most people suffering from mental illness, even moderate to severe mental illness, are not violent and they don't kill anybody. And they have no interest in killing anybody, and they just don't have that instinct. This was a calculated thing. This was a guy who had a hit list. This was a guy who had a series of political beliefs. This was a guy who supported Trump and hated Democrats and was stochastically predisposed by all of the rhetoric of people like Randy Fine to go out and commit an act of violence. So, you know, Randy Fine calling whoever it was, a school board member, a whore, that's okay if it's in a private text message. Accusing a colleague of being a terrorist is okay if it's true, as far as he's concerned. But the rules are different for different people. One of the things I've been saying for years, I wrote about in the book, I think it's important to remember, is that when they don't even care enough to defend their principles, once the principles become inconvenient, you're not going to convince anyone by saying, I thought you were for or against this thing, but now you appear to have... They don't care. And it's the wrong basis on which to even talk to them. That's my takeaway from hearing from Randy Fine. If you've ever dealt with nausea occasionally, more frequently, you might want to check out one of our sponsors, Relief Band, a wearable wristband designed to relieve and maybe even prevent nausea. Many people use it for nausea related to anxiety or migraines or traveling by car, plane, or boat, sort of motion sickness. Easy to use, works quickly, lasts as long as you need, completely drug-free, no side effects. This was originally developed for use in hospital settings, and it works through a process called transdermal neuromodulation accustimulation, which is a lot of words to basically say it sends a pulse to the part of your nervous system involved in regulating nausea. And there's research indicating this can be helpful for nausea from motion sickness, pregnancy, even from certain drug side effects. And there are studies that suggest that combined with medication, it can be very useful for post-surgery nausea. Relief Band's new Premier Plus model provides advanced nausea relief and includes a digital clock, uses smart skin sensing technology to preserve battery life. Relief Band has earned an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau. It has over 100,000 satisfied customers online. If nausea is something you deal with, it might be worth seeing if Relief Band can help. Visit reliefband.com and use the code PACMAN for 20% off plus free shipping. The info is in the description.